Hey, and we're back with another good old Tom video. For all the fellas out there that are new, welcome to the show. If you love some good old survival horror, then stick around because we got some good stuff. As usual, this is an impressions video, so that means that we got a brew today. This time from Birrificio del Ducato, aka Brewery of the Duke from Parma. Local brew, let's give it a taste. Hey, that ain't too bad. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is the remake for, of course, Resident Evil 4 that came out all the way out in 2005. Some people wonder if this remake is something that really needs to happen or not, but, of course, it's my job to give you a hand, so let's talk about Resident Evil 4. This is the second big survival horror remake that came out in 2023, the first one being, of course, the Dead Space remake. And I do gotta say, fellas, that Resident Evil 4 does everything that I wanted the Dead Space remake to do, so let's get into it. Resident Evil 4, like its original, takes place about 6 years after the events of Raccoon City, aka the events of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, where a more jaded Leon S. Kennedy has been tasked by the US government to go and rescue the president's daughter, Ashley Graham, who has been kidnapped and taken to a nondescript country in Europe where they speak Spanish, and kinda makes me wonder, where in Europe do they speak Spanish? I guess we'll have to find out. From there, it turns out that this rural part of Spain is under the influence of a group that use disgusting parasites known as Las Plagas to infect people and turn them into disgusting insect worm monster creatures on the inside. And with that, it's up to Leon S. Kennedy to go against Los Iluminados to figure out what the hell is going on in this part of Spain, and of course to save Ashley. So with the premise of Resident Evil 4 out of the way, let's just go and talk about gameplay for a little bit. Resident Evil 4 Remake keeps the gameplay pretty much intact from the original Resident Evil 4 experience. Like pretty much all survival horror games, it's this dance of managing resources against an onslaught of enemies, where every single hit is a dent on your plan for the rest of the game in terms of resource management. So basically that means is that you gotta make sure that you have the right bullets, the right materials, the right health, and all those items in place, because the fight you're gonna have to go against is pretty wild. Now it just kind of feels like the systems that were already placed in Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake, and it's just perfecting them. Leon feels incredibly great to control in combat, and he's incredibly responsive with his movement. It never really feels like you were hit by an enemy because of clunky controls or because you tried to get past somebody and it didn't work. In this game, it's all your own fault because it works really damn well. That's not to say that there aren't a few changes that the Resident Evil 4 Remake has over its predecessor, so let's get into that quick. A few differences that I picked out that were not present in the original is the habit of all these games to basically have craftable materials and the durability on the knife that changes the way you play. Usually I'm kinda not one for crafting in games, as it just adds another layer of busy work to the gameplay that I don't really need. But in Resi 4, it's there to basically give you the choice of what tools to use. It could basically be crafting different types of ammunition that you need specifically, or saving it up for a rifle or shotgun ammo box instead. Now the knife durability has kind of been a point of contention with some people, and myself with crafting. I usually find that item durability in a game is somewhat egregious and kind of unnecessary. But just like crafting, it is something to me that is welcome in Resi 4 Remake. See, in the original, you could use your knife extensively as a sort of crutch that for players that were really good at the game, you could save all your ammo for all the bigger baddies out there that really needed it. This time around though, with durability, it doesn't just mean you can swing the thing around willy-nilly, but it also means that you have to pick when to use it. Are you going to use it to ward off an enemy while in the middle of reloading your weapon? Or as that one get out of bitten free card that takes a lot of damage to the knife, but at least you didn't take a thing to your health? Only thing of the durability that I didn't like though is the body armor, which you can get later down the road, that I thought was going to be like a one-time buff sort of thing to your defense, but it turns out that that also has durability attached, and it's not just that, but it's also incredibly expensive to fix. So after you get hit like quite a few times, your armor will break, and then it's like, well, gotta go to the merchant, and he's gonna say, of course, hey, what are you buying?
Good luck to you, stranger.
But that's really all I got with gripes in the gameplay sort of thing. Overall, the combat is great in creating these little playgrounds for you to deal with enemies and a variety of clever ways for those enemies to spook you. Before playing through Resident Evil 4 Remake, I actually went through 1, 2, and 3 all over again, just to get a feel for things and get caught up with the story. And man, oh man, I thought I was going to be blasting through 4, because I went and just blasted through 3 like enemies were hot butter. But the thing is that it actually wasn't that way. There was enough new stuff in 4 that it kind of caught me off guard. And I had to play through the whole game, kind of like it was a whole new game, which was really, really fun, and I really enjoyed it, because it gave me, I'm going to say, it put me on my toes again. That's something you want to see with survival horror games. But, of course, that's just a gameplay, and we got other things to talk about, so let's move on over to the narrative of Resident Evil 4. On to the narrative, it mostly remains intact, but there's a few differences in tone between this remake and the original that I have to say this remake is pretty much everything I really wanted to in Resident Evil. See, while I loved the original Resident Evil 4, that game to me was kind of the beginning of the end when it came to a more serious Resident Evil. Sure, there were more outlandish and ridiculous stuff before Resident Evil 4, but it kind of got out of hand with Resi 4 in my opinion. That's not to say that some of the more goofier stuff is in there, but overall Resident Evil 4 Remake takes great pains to make the narrative more grounded, and it fits with the overall narrative that they're trying to tie the remakes together with, that hopefully in Resident Evil 5 they'll have a new sort of more grounded narrative for that as well. And of course, there's still fan favorites in there like Luis Serra, and of course, my favorite being the merchant that just so happens to be in all the right spots at the right time. And with it, they kind of bring a level of levity to the situation, which is always welcome. There's still a few goofy lines in there, like, hey, where's everybody going? Bingo?
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
And I do sadly have to report though that some of the other lines are missing, like one of my favorites being, no thanks, bro. It sadly didn't make it into the game, though it gets mentioned in an achievement, which is kind of funny.
No thanks, bro.
My.
But one part of the narrative in this go-around that I really enjoyed is the relationship between Ashley and Leon, which was improved in my opinion. Ashley this time around seems like a much more capable character, and she goes through various parts of the game less like a damsel in distress and more like somebody who's actively trying to help you get the hell out of there. Even in the one section where you gotta play as her for a little bit, it was a lot more refreshing than the first time I played it, and she is just not so dumb and annoying and stupid. That's not to say that there aren't some other elements that kind of carry over from the original Resident Evil 4, but this time around, when it's kind of a bit more serious, it works a lot better. And one of these is that there's this sort of like sexual tension between Ashley and Leon. Ashley starts to get a little bit of the hots for Leon. It's very kind of underplayed, but it's this sort of tension that's always there that gets heightened a little bit when Ada shows into the picture, but it's this time around it's done quite a bit better. Overall, basically the narrative of Resident Evil 4 just does what it needs to, which is just kind of freshen it up, give it a new sort of style that people might enjoy, and well, that's just about it. And so, of course, we're at that time, so let's just kind of cap it off and talk about the presentation very quickly. The presentation of Resident Evil 4 is overall very decent here and there, but there's a couple other little things that annoyed me. But to start off, the game looks incredible. The RE engine, remake after remake, game after game, holds up really well, and it looks fantastic. It's not really much I can say, and for the most part, the RE engine is pretty well optimized, but this time around, it's kind of getting a little weird for me. I'm not quite sure if anybody else had to experience this, but the options in the menu for optimization were just kind of all over the place this time. You would try to turn on things and turn off things, and every so often I'd get crashes because of visual memory overload, that sort of stuff. The right near at the end, I got a few visual memory crashes again that sort of soured the last few hours of gameplay, but hopefully it doesn't happen to you on your PC or if you're playing on console. And I was doing that for a while, and eventually I just went through the preset and hit the recommended button, and that seemed to fix most of it for me, and then the game played at a very nice sort of 60 frames. Another gripe for me, and this is really just a nitpick, and I wouldn't really worry about it that much, but Los Ganados don't speak in a Castilian Spanish accent. For the fellas out there that are not aware, in Spain they have their own sort of Spanish accent that's very interesting because a lot of the Z's and C sounds kind of have a lisp to them, so it's either like zapatos means shoes in Spanish, so it could be zapatos, or in Spain it's zapatos. And the villagers kind of just talk in a more, not stereotypical Latin American accent, but they speak a more neutral kind of Spanish instead of a more Castilian Spanish that you would expect out of Spain. Though with that little nitpick out of the way, I have one major gripe in the presentation, and that is, I don't know why, it might have been a scheduling thing or something like that, but they changed the voice actress for Ada Wong from the previous voice actress who played her in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Usually, you know, I kind of don't really worry about this stuff. It's just like, well, sure, you know, actors change, they don't have time, they make time for different people, contractual obligations, that sort of stuff. But this time around, I'm sorry to whoever is the new voice actress, but this is not a good Ada Wong in my opinion, because I just played through Resident Evil 2 Remake and I had to go through that one, which I believe was Jolene Anderson was the voice actress. She did it just perfectly. She did a perfect Ada. She was both kind of caring but also coy and a little conniving, like just that perfect mix for a secret agent sort of thing. But this time around, I don't know who the voice actress is, but it's just, man, like, it is legitimately distracting. I do not know what other way to describe it apart from, it's like, man, every time I'd hear her speak, I'd just pause the game and I'm like, in disbelief. And really, it's kind of a shame because all in all, the whole game as a package is a fantastic one that honestly, it deserves to be played. Personally, fellas, Capcom has hit it out of the park once again with this remake, and it thankfully puts a new precedent on Resident Evil going forward with this more grounded and serious, and ultimately, in my opinion, more spooky experience than the more goofy experience of yesteryear. And since this is, of course, an impressions video, I don't really give a score out like I do in my normal videos. So this time around, I'm just going to say, you know, whether I recommend it or I don't. And the flat answer is, yeah, duh, go out and play it. Like I said, fellas, Resident Evil 4 Remake is just everything that I wanted this game to be. It was more serious, it had nicer visuals, it maintained a lot more of the gameplay stuff intact that really didn't need changing, and just did a wonderful job giving it this nice, beautiful, modern once-over that Resident Evil 4, while it didn't really need, it's kind of appreciated. Sadly, you can only really play it at full price at the moment, but for me, it's easily worth full price. And even more so when it eventually goes on sale and you can get it for a bit cheaper. At that case, fellas, just go and get it. Like, you're gonna have a great time, especially if you enjoyed Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now you might be wondering for yourself about the Battle of the Remakes. Since both Dead Space Remake and Resident Evil 4 Remake came out this year, and they were both bespoke remakes of wonderful survival horror games, you might wonder to yourself which one is better and which one would I recommend if you couldn't get both. And the answer to that is very simple for me, and that's honestly Resident Evil 4 Remake. Resident Evil 4 Remake, I personally feel, did way more for the game than Dead Space Remake did. It's not that Dead Space Remake was bad, but it was a game that really didn't need a remake. And with that game, you're more just kind of, basically, as I said in that review, you're microwaving leftovers. Not to say the microwave leftovers can't be good, but it's the same thing, basically. And that's not really a mark against Dead Space Remake, it's more just goes to show that the original Dead Space that came out in 2008 is just still that damn good. But on the other hand, Resident Evil 4 Remake is different. It's different in tone. It's different in a few different like narrative sort of elements that to me makes it a more interesting experience. Instead of just microwave leftovers, this one's like, I don't know, a tiramisu at a nice little pasticceria here in Italy. And you get a choice between one from this place or one from this other pasticceria. They're both tiramisu, they're both wonderful, absolutely delectable even. But they're a bit different. Those two families make those two different tiramisus a bit differently, and that's what Resident Evil 4 Remake is that if you want Resident Evil 4 done in a different way, you know, if you want it more goofy, you want your no thanks bro, then of course, go play the original Resident Evil. It's on most modern systems, it's on PC, and of course it's cheap, and it still plays really well. But if you want something a bit more newer, a bit more grounded, more serious, then Resident Evil 4 is going to do everything that you want it to do. And honestly, fellas, that's all I really wanted it to do. But at the end of the day, if I recommend them, I kind of still recommend both. So if you can afford both, go and get both. You're not going to be disappointed. Though if you can only really pay for one, I would definitely go for Resident Evil 4 Remake instead, and then try some of the other options that Dead Space Remake has to play it more cheaply. Hey, and of course, fellas, that gets us right to the end here, and if you joined me all the way, thank you so much, and I appreciate every single one of you. If you're a new person here, hey, well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and welcome to the show. Go take a look at my other backlog of videos, and if you enjoy those, then maybe, maybe you should like and subscribe. That'd be pretty cool. But for everybody else, hey, it's another video. We're going to be out here with another video for you soon. This is Tomthechosen1 in rural Spain, trying to figure out how can I convert my pesetas to euros, because damn, I can't buy nothing out here with that, because the shopkeep, I think he's got brainworms for real. So this is Tomthechosen1 dealing with that nonsense, and I'll see you guys next time.